In 1990, the Linotype machine, which had cast the metal backbone of every newspaper on Earth for 102 years, simply ceased to exist in commercial printing. Within a decade, an entire profession vanished, taking with it a century of industrial heartbeat. In 1886, Ottmar Mergenthaler patented the Linotype machine in Baltimore, Maryland, and within a decade, it had become impossible to imagine a newspaper without one. A single operator sat at a keyboard. Their fingers flew across 90 keys. The machine responded by assembling brass matrices, tiny letter molds, at superhuman speed, dropping them into a line, heating metal to 700 degrees Fahrenheit, and casting a complete line of type in seconds. What once took a typesetter hours by hand now took minutes by machine. By 1920, virtually every major newspaper on Earth ran on Linotype. The New York Times had 125 of them. The Los Angeles Times had 70. In a single city, Chicago, over 500 machines clattered through the night in newsrooms and print shops, setting type for everything from the Tribune to the Daily News. The machines were loud, temperamental, and essential. They defined the industrial heartbeat of the 20th century. A skilled Linotype operator earned middle-class wages, $18 to $25 weekly in 1920, when that meant something. They belonged to unions. They had job security. They were crucial enough that newspapers negotiated with them, compromised with them, depended on them. For 102 years, from 1886 to 1988, the Linotype machine was not a curiosity or a backup system. It was the only way to make a newspaper happen. But in 1990, something happened that would erase not just the machines, but the entire world they had built. The warning signs were everywhere. In 1973, the first digital typesetting system arrived in newsrooms. It was crude, a computer the size of a refrigerator that could set type faster than any Linotype operator alive. By 1978, the New York Times had already begun converting its composing rooms to digital systems. The shift wasn't sudden. It was deliberate. It was chosen. Newspaper publishers saw the math clearly. A Linotype operator earned $25,000 a year in $1,980. That operator needed a machine worth $5,000 to $8,000. A digital typesetter cost more upfront, yes, but it required no union wages, no benefits, no pension. One person could do the work of 5. The machines never got tired. They never struck. They never retired. By 1985, Apple released the Macintosh. Adobe created PostScript. Suddenly, what had been impossible became inevitable. Desktop publishing meant anyone with $3,000 could do what required a trained operator and a room full of metal type. Linotype operators didn't see competitors. They saw their entire world collapsing at 60 miles per hour. There were warnings. In 1986, the International Typographical Union watched 30,000 union printing jobs vanish in a single year. They negotiated buyouts. They trained members for new roles. It wasn't enough. The technology wasn't being improved. It was being erased. In 1988, the last Linotype machine rolled off the production line in Germany. Nobody celebrated. Nobody mourned. It simply stopped being made. By 1989, the Mergenthaler Linotype Company, the corporation that had dominated the industry for 103 years, filed for bankruptcy. The foundries that cast replacement type closed their doors. Training programs shut down. And in composing rooms across North America, operators began receiving notices. The notices arrived in 1978. Not all at once, that would have been merciful. They came in waves, as newspaper after newspaper made the switch to photo typesetting and then digital composition. The International Typographical Union, which had represented Linotype operators since 1852, watched its membership collapse from over 100,000 in 1970 to fewer than 30,000 by 1985. In 1986, exactly 1 century after Ottmar Mergenthaler's first Linotype cast its first line, the Los Angeles Times ran its final edition composed on the machines. Operators received buyout packages, retraining programs, early retirement offers that looked generous until you realized they were goodbye letters written in the language of severance. The scrapping began immediately. Foundries that had cast metal for a century closed their doors between 1986 and 1990. In 1987, the Mergenthaler Linotype company itself ceased manufacturing machines. The equipment exchange, classified ads in trade journals filled with desperate sales, complete composing rooms for pennies on the dollar. Most machines went to scrapyards, brass and steel worth more than the history they carried. By 1988, photo typesetting had won decisively. By 1990, digitization had rendered even that victory obsolete. The last commercial Linotype operator in North America, whose name has been recorded differently in different sources, a small erasure within the larger one, retired in 1992. No ceremony marked it. No final line was cast and preserved. What happened instead, to the machines still sitting in back rooms and basements across the continent, would determine whether anyone would ever fully understand what the profession had actually meant. Within 5 years of 1988, the silence was total. By 1993, the last Linotype foundries in North America had closed their doors. Mergenthaler Linotype Company, which had manufactured the machines since 1886, ceased production entirely in 1992. The same year, Robert Eder, the last active Linotype operator in North America, retired from the Chicago Sun-Times. His final shift ended not with ceremony, but with a standard Tuesday. The machines themselves became orphans. Thousands were scrapped for their metal value. Steel frames worth $40 to $80 per ton meant that complete machines, some weighing 700 pounds, were cut apart with acetylene torches in recycling yards across America. No inventory was kept. No one photographed them beforehand. By 1998, museums had begun quietly requesting donations, but most machines were already gone. The Smithsonian acquired a single example in 1990, preserved through luck rather than foresight. The disappearance left a peculiar wound. Journalists who had worked alongside Linotypes found themselves unable to explain to younger reporters what the sound meant, the clatter and hiss, the molten lead, the rhythm that governed deadlines for 102 years. There were no training programs left, no demonstrations, no living lineage. A 55-year-old compositor in 1988 could not pass the knowledge forward because there was nowhere to pass it to. Some operators kept photographs. A few machines survived in private collections, dormant in basements and garages. But they sat inert, unpowered, their keyboards gathering dust. Without operating knowledge, without parts suppliers, without anyone who remembered how to maintain them, they became archaeological artifacts in real time, still warm from recent use, yet already incomprehensible. It would take decades before anyone wondered seriously where all the machines had actually gone, and whether any single complete, functional Linotype still existed anywhere on the continent. By 2004, fewer than a dozen complete, operational Linotype machines were known to exist anywhere in North America. Most sat in museum basements unpowered. Some had been cut apart for scrap metal, their brass matrices melted down, their steel frames sold by weight to recyclers who didn't know what they were dismantling. The Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., acquired one example in 1998, but it was catalogued as a historical artifact, not as working technology. No one had thought to preserve them while they still ran. What we can trace today are fragments. Trade journals from 1985 to 1992 document the transition. Typography magazine published its last feature on linotype operation in 1989. The International Typographical Union, which had represented operators since 1852, began offering retraining programs in 1987, teaching former linecasters to use Adobe PageMaker and Quark Express. By 1991, ITU membership had collapsed from 65,000 to under 8,000. Oral histories were rarely conducted. Most operators simply retired or died without being interviewed about their 60-year careers. What we learned is this: the speed of technological replacement was faster than our capacity to document it. The machines vanished because they were worth more as scrap than as heritage, and because no single institution or government saw preservation as their responsibility. The Library of Congress holds no functioning specimen. No university dedicated a lab to keeping linotype operation alive as a craft or historical practice. Yet the question that haunted researchers into the 2010s was stranger. If not a single commercial machine survived in operation, how much of the knowledge to repair one had also vanished? Could a linotype be brought back to life if one were found intact? The linotype's disappearance reminds us that even the most indispensable technologies can become ghosts overnight. Another file is already open: the rise and fall of the dot matrix printer. Subscribe to the archive for more vanishing acts of the industrial age.